Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President Joe Biden, accompanied by Secretary of Labor Tom Perez and Mr. John Cowan.
Teddy Roosevelt once said, "Far and away, the best prize that life offers is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." But what TR only glimpsed was how profoundly technology and globalization would shake the foundations of work in America. Good afternoon, I'm John Cowan, President of Third Way, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here today. We are honored to be joined by Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary of Labor Thomas Perez. The Vice President is perhaps, certainly in our view, the most passionate and committed champion of the middle class of anyone in public life today. And pursuing that passion, over the past few months, he has talked to workers, companies, and experts with one burning question: how can we ensure every American has work worth doing with the skills to thrive in the new economy? We are excited to hear from him shortly. In their ongoing search for the best ideas, the Vice President's team also asked Third Way to bring together other innovators on workforce development. After the Vice President's presentation, we will hold a roundtable with this group to discuss what's working and why, and then send a white paper with our findings to the Vice President. This panel is an extraordinary bunch. I'll introduce them now, starting on my right. Edward Gordon heads up Imperial Consulting Corporation and has written 18 books about the skills gap so far. Maureen Conway is the Executive Director of the Aspen Institute's Workforce Strategies Initiative, the nation's hub for best practices for job training. Michael Callanan is the Executive Director of the National Joint Apprenticeship and Training Committee for the Electrical Industry, a model union industry collaboration for apprenticeships. Shaila Itticheria is the co-founder of Institute, a dynamic New York City organization that offers paid apprenticeships and is expanding soon to DC and St. Louis. Rufus Glasper is the chancellor of Maricopa Community Colleges in Phoenix, where they are running a top-notch corporate college, funded mostly by companies which hire the school to train their workers. Karen Sitnick is the director of the Workforce Investment Board for Baltimore City, which is reinventing how cities match job seekers with employment opportunities. Doris Gonzalez is the Director of Corporate Citizenship at IBM, which has created the Pathways in Technology program, a landmark in STEM education. Byron O'Geist is Deputy Director of the National Economic Council at the White House, coordinating economic policy on jobs and labor markets, innovation, and infrastructure. He and his team are supporting the Vice President as he prepares his job-driven training report to President Obama. Barbara Veazey is the president of West Kentucky Community and Technical College, whose efforts to meet the demand of the area's healthcare sector set a national standard. Earl Buford is the CEO of the Wisconsin Regional Training Partnership, an employer-union collaboration that gets big results in preparing low-income people for careers in construction and manufacturing. William Haidt is the general president of the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, which runs a premier union training program where local chapters partner with community colleges so their apprentices can earn college credit. Ashwin Barath is the CEO of Multivision, an IT service provider in Fairfax, Virginia, that has created a state-of-the-art free 10-week program to teach unemployed workers IT skills. Deborah Shepard is the president of Lake Area Technical Institute in South Dakota, which is a national leader in aligning its training programs with local industry. Patrick Cushing is the CEO of WorkHands, a one-of-a-kind San Francisco social network for skilled trade people. It's essentially a LinkedIn for plumbers, carpenters, mechanics, and others in trades. And finally, Steve Van Osdol is the president of Walla Walla Community College in southeastern Washington State, where they are pioneering new ways to use employment and wage data to help students chart career paths. We are looking forward to mining their expertise. It is now my honor to introduce Secretary Perez, who is focused relentlessly on giving every American a chance at a middle-class job that allows them to achieve a middle-class life. A big part of his efforts is ensuring that ready-to-work Americans are matched with ready-to-be-filled jobs. The Secretary is himself a product of the American dream, born to Dominican parents in Buffalo, New York. He previously served as Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice. Before that, he was Secretary of Maryland's Department of Labor. The Secretary brings a lifetime of experience and talent to this job, and we are delighted to have him here not only to introduce the Vice President, but to lead the afternoon roundtable discussion with our panelists. Please join me in welcoming Secretary of Labor Thomas Perez.
Thank you so much, John. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone here, and thank you to our distinguished panelists who have come from virtually every corner of the country to impart their wisdom on us today. And thank you to the marketer-in-chief, one of my bosses and one of my heroes, the Vice President, Joe Biden, for everything you're doing. This is a remarkably appropriate time to have this conversation right now, because this issue of making sure that people can upskill and punch their ticket to the middle class, making sure that businesses can grow, is at the heart of the President and Vice President's opportunity agenda. And here's the good news. Everywhere I travel, everywhere the President and Vice President travels, we hear from businesses that they want to grow, that they see a bright future, whether it's in manufacturing or in other areas. And what we need to make sure is that they have access to that skilled workforce so that workers can punch their ticket to the middle class and employers can expand. And to demonstrate the seriousness of the President's commitment to this opportunity agenda, he named the Vice President to serve as his point person on this important review of federal job training programs to ensure that they're job-driven. In other words, accountable for getting Americans into good jobs and careers as quickly as possible. And so our initiative has 5 basic goals: making it easier for businesses to find skilled workers, making it easier for people to acquire the in-demand skills, making sure we spur innovation in all areas of our workforce system, making sure that we improve our measurement system so that we know what works and can take it to scale, and know what doesn't work and either fix it or not do it anymore. And finally, lift up registered apprenticeship programs, because we know there's a bright future in America for people who work with their hands. And apprenticeship has application not only in traditional skilled trades, but in IT, healthcare, cybersecurity, and other contexts. We already have a very robust public workforce system. I've had the privilege of working in that area in local government and then state government. And the public workforce system helps out-of-work Americans get the tools and resources they need to get back to the job. Since the beginning of the Great Recession, more than 14 million people a year have turned to our job training and employment services for help. 81% of unemployed training graduates found a new job within 3 months, and on average, training graduates went on to earn 18% more than those who did not complete training. And we have many partners in this room, and I thank you for your leadership. Together with state and local partners, we operate a network of more than 2,500 American job centers across the country where people can get help in a variety of ways. The Vice President and I visited one such center in Nashua, New Hampshire a couple months ago, and we heard the great success stories of companies and workers and nonprofits, community colleges, and others working together to help people upskill and to help employers meet their job needs. I'd like to think of American Job Centers and the Department of Labor as we're kind of like Match.com, helping to match people, making that connection between employers and job seekers. And sometimes the connection involves nothing more than a little resume writing and giving you context. Sometimes it involves many more things, and we are capable, and people like Karen have been doing this for years, of doing whatever it takes. And partnerships with the private sector are at the heart of everything we do. They have to be, because if you're going to create jobs, you got to talk to the job creators. And the North Star of our efforts is to make sure that everything we do is demand-driven, making sure we're giving people the skills, certifications, credentials required for the positions that are available now. And it's really about connecting ready-to-work Americans with ready-to-be-filled jobs. And we're doing a lot of work in these areas. We're focusing on a number of different challenges, including but not limited to the challenges confronting the long-term unemployed, because we know that one of the biggest pieces of unfinished business from the Great Recession is the plight of the long-term unemployed, who are simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. They have remarkable skills, and we need to continue to help. And when we were in New Hampshire, the Vice President and I had the privilege of meeting people who benefited from our on-the-job training programs and are now, again, back in the workforce. We can't quit on them because they're not quitting on us. We need them in the game, and our workforce system is hard at work on this very challenge. We are spending a lot of time in the area of apprenticeship. I mentioned that a couple minutes ago because I really do believe that there's a bright future in America for people who work with their hands. A couple weeks ago, I was at the Finishing Trades Institute in Philadelphia, which is a wonderful partnership between labor and management. And it took kids in the inner city who just graduated from high school, and they had a real smile on their face because they were getting great job training, and they were getting a skill. And by the way, this is accredited by the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. So it's a stackable credential. They're not only punching their ticket to the middle class, but they're punching their ticket up the higher education superhighway. So these are the things we're trying to do, and we're shining a light on these issues. And there's nobody better to be involved in shining a light on these issues than the thinker and marketer in chief, the Vice President of the United States. You know, as somebody who spent a lot of time in Scranton, Pennsylvania, I learned early on that the Vice President doesn't need a lot of briefing on this because it's in his DNA. Helping people punch their ticket to the middle class is something he saw day in and day out growing up. These challenges aren't abstract challenges. Middle class values are not simply a talking point for him. They're part of his DNA. And so he has brought tremendous vision and energy to this issue. And frankly, we have a remarkable set of opportunities here because there's a lot of good stuff going on. We have a bit of a tree falling in the woods problem at times because we need to do a better job of letting the world know the good things that are happening, taking many of the good things that are happening and bringing them to scale. And what better person to do that than someone who has lived the dream in America, who knows so many people personally by first name who are struggling. And so when he thinks of this issue, he thinks of his neighbors and his fellow residents of Scranton and all over America. So it's my honor to present to you the marketer-in-chief and the visionary-in-chief of this initiative, our Vice President, Joe Biden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. It's been a pleasure working with you. You know, John, you started off with a quote. My dad had a similar quote. He used to say, "It's a lucky man or woman gets up in the morning, puts both feet on the floor, knows what they're about to do, and thinks it still matters." Mm-hmm. I think this still matters. I think all of you think what we're doing still matters. And I really mean it. That was one of my dad's mantras. It still matters. And it matters to a whole hell of a lot of people. And it matters particularly right now to the people that Bill Height and I grew up with. Most of the guys in my neighborhood either became a priest, joined a trade, or became a law enforcement officer or firefighter. I wasn't qualified for any of those things, so I ran for vice president. I ran for president, and I ended up vice president. John, we've worked together a long time, and one of the smartest guy that I know in the world that I've worked with, Ron Klain, is on your board, and we started working with you at the inception of this organization, and you really have been innovative. You reach out and you look for very practical solutions. And I wish I had more time today, and I've asked John whether or not I'll be invited back, or maybe I can invite you all into the White House, I mean for real, to talk about something bigger than I'm going to talk about today. You know, the Secretary used the term job creators. When I grew up in my first 30 years in the Senate, I thought job creators were the engineers, the guys who worked on the line, the salespersons. I didn't think they were just the CEOs and the bankers. They weren't the only job creators. They're important, but they're not the job creators. And I really resent this notion that job creators are basically those who can generate capital formation. They do a lot. But, you know, I thought my dad was a job creator, and he never owned anything, but he managed, you know, an enterprise for a long time. And the thing I wish I could talk with you about is there used to be a basic bargain in the United States of America. And I really mean this sincerely, and I think I could prove this given the time. The basic bargain in America, that's shared by Democrats and Republicans, disagreed on technical pieces of it and degree, was that if you worked like hell and you were part of increasing productivity, you were part of increased profitability, you shared in that increased productivity and profitability. That's not happening today. Hadn't been happening for a long while. A lot of reasons for it. I'm not here to give you a populist argument, but I am here to tell you that a lot of those reasons, from globalization to issues relating to everything from that to fiscal policy, to tax policy, individual and corporate tax policy, as well as lack of the willingness of the public sector and private sector, for different reasons, to invest as they had in the past, invest in new enterprises, new technologies. I think it's part of, I come from the corporate state of Delaware, and I say that proudly. I'm proud I represented Delaware for 36 years. But I don't know how many times I heard CEOs in my state complain as I'd be on the platform heading to Washington. I commuted every day, and they'd be on the platform heading to New York. And these are friends of mine. I grew up with them. They ended up being the CEOs and running the major corporations in my state. And they'd say, "Where are you going, Charlie, Harry?" And they'd say, "I'm going up to New York to meet with some slim little guy who's 28 years old, who's going to tell me that unless I can increase profitability next quarter, I'm going to be downgraded." So I'm making decisions that I shouldn't be making. I'm making decisions about that don't affect the long-term interest of my company, but I got to right now. Everything from that to our compensation packages, and I'm not complaining about who makes what. It's just the incentive and how you make money, what nature the reward is. A tax structure that I think is badly out of kilter. I think we got to start taking a look at rewarding earned income, not just unearned income. I think the changes we made in the inheritance tax, I don't want wealthy people to have to be in real trouble, but I think the idea is that the changes were unnecessary, and there's about $1.2 trillion less revenue available in the long term. So I think there's a lot of things, and globalization plays a gigantic part of this, and technological change, maybe the biggest part. So I'm not saying there's a simple answer to it, but I'm prepared to nominate any one of you here for the Nobel Prize if you figure out how we're going to get good paying jobs become the norm. How many of you have children who graduated from a great university in the recent past? And how many of you know whether they're back in their room at home? And beyond half a dozen loci of where you can go, there's not that many jobs you can go out there and make $120,000, $150,000 a year anymore. And the reason I raise this, and I know it's not the subject, and my staff has gone, "Oh God, I hope he doesn't get into this," but I feel very strongly about it, and I'm going to be talking a lot more about it as time goes on. You know, when the middle class does well, everybody does well. the wealthy do very well, and the poor have a leg up. But the most important thing, I would argue, and I'm not unique, and I like a lot of sociologists that are writing about this these days, is the middle class is almost it's less than a number. It's more a value set, and it is the sinew that stitches together the social fabric of the country. It's the reason why we've been so stable politically, economically, as well as, I would say, emotionally stable as a nation for so long. And anybody who suggests, and I'm not suggesting if you meet with me that I'm looking to blame anybody. I'm just trying to figure the way out of this, because I don't know how we sustain a country with the same kind of, how can I say it, equilibrium without a growing and a vibrant middle class. I don't mean that the middle class is over, but it's a different shape than it is now. But I'm gonna reserve my comments today, and I apologize ahead of time. They never schedule me where I get to stay and hear the discussion. They have me come in and they have me say something, and I'd be much better served if I listened to you for the next 20 minutes than you listen to me. But I guess that's not the role today. But I really next time. But as you know, John, I mean it.
I do know.
I mean, I genuinely mean it. I need help. We need help, and we need all the ideas we can get that are all the constructive ideas. Look, I think that, and I know I'm referred to as the White House optimist all the time, like as my grandpa would say, like I'm the guy that fell off the turnip truck yesterday. You know, I know that as if I'm the new guy in town. I've been around longer than most of these guys. Now, by the way, I know you're immediately thinking age. I have a new way of looking at age. There was a great pitcher in it used to be called the Negro Leagues before the majors allowed African Americans to play. And his name was Satchel Paige. He was a great pitcher, and he didn't get brought up to the majors until he was 45 years old. And he pitched, I think, till age 49 or 50. And he was in the locker room when his 47th birthday, I think it was, and all the press, all the sports writers were in there and said, "Satch, how you feel, man? You know, being in the majors, 47 years old and pitching." He said, "Look, fellas, the way I look at age," he said, "I think it this way. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were?" I'm 42 years old because that's how I feel. And I think the American people feel young too. They're a little bit, but they're a little bit disillusioned right now. And I think they don't even realize that we're better positioned than any nation in the world by a long run to be the economic engine of the 21st century. That's not hyperbole. I genuinely believe that. And I would suggest there's reasons for it, and they've just popped up there. One is that we have a rule of law and respect for intellectual property. I have traveled over, I think it's 900,000 miles now so far, just as vice president. And, you know, other countries not only are stealing our intellectual property, but they're stealing their future away from their people, because they're not generating indigenous intellectual integrity and new ideas because it's not being rewarded. And we have a court system that's respected. I can't say that for a significant number of our competitors. And it's the reason why, by the way, the Boston Consulting Group says 51% of the companies, American companies located in China specifically, but it's not just China, are looking to come home. They're looking to come home. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. We also have, and most studies show, American workers are 3 times more productive than Chinese workers and other workers. I'm not picking on China, it's just the largest economy. I have a great relationship with Mr. Xi. I spend a lot of time with him, and I want them to do well. But the truth is, we also have through, you know, we take, you know, presidents get blamed for things beyond their control and get no credit for things that maybe happen on their watch. But without claiming excess credit, the truth of the matter is we have the most reliable, cheap source of energy in the world now. for a major industrial nation. The epicenter of energy will be North America in the 21st century, at least by the mid-20s and maybe even earlier. And North America will be energy independent. It's a lot cheaper to manufacture in the United States from an energy perspective than it is in China. I think it's 4 or 5 times cheaper. Europe, 3 times cheaper, roughly. I don't know how many the exact percentages, but a lot cheaper. And so we're in a situation where I guess it's less than half than Europe and less than a third of the cost in Asia. And we have world-class research institutions. For all the talk about American education, and by the way, we have, if I told you when we took office, and this is what we talk about tree fall in the forest, if I told you that the dropout rate of Hispanics has dropped by 25% since we took office, when we took office, I said, by the way, everybody who will sign on to a 25% reduction in the dropout rate with Hispanic Americans, raise your hand. I imagine all of you would have bought into that. The same way with others. So, I mean, there's actually been real progress that has been made. The graduation rate's the highest it's been in a long, long time, close to 80%. And so there's a lot of good things happening, but a lot more that we have to do. On the way back a couple trips ago, I was coming from Mumbai to Tokyo and then to Seoul and then off to Beijing, and I stopped to see an old friend, not an old friend, that's presumptuous of me, someone I admire. Most world leaders admire him. He's referred to as the Henry Kissinger of the Orient. I stopped in Singapore to see Lee Kuan Yew, and he's 92 or 3 years old now. And he invited me to see him, and I was delighted to do it. And midway through my conversation, he said to me, I asked him, I said, well, Mr. President, what's China doing right now? And he said, oh, they're in America. He speaks perfect English, as you know. They're in America looking for the buried black box. Nothing to do with that flight. That buried black box. And I looked at him quizzically, like you're looking at me. I said, Mr. President. He said, that box that you can smile, by the way, I'm a good guy. You know, she can smile. That buried black box, absolutely true. I'm quoting. The buried black box that contains the secret that allows America to be the only country in the world constantly able to remake itself. And I said, I'm getting old enough to presume to give you an answer, Mr. President. I said, I think there are 2 things in that black box. One is that there is stamped in the DNA of every American, naturalized or native born, is an instinct to challenge orthodoxy. An absolute instinct, unlike any other country in the world. If you actually think about it, unlike any other country in the world, orthodoxy is challenged, even in schools or elementary schools, where we need a lot of work. A kid never gets in trouble for saying, I don't believe that, or I don't agree with that, or I'm not prepared to accept that. I can't think of any other country where it's so ingrained in the culture. That's how you build new things. You challenge orthodoxy. That's all you do. That's what you've been doing your whole career, challenging orthodoxy. And I said, there's a second thing. The second thing in that black box is the constant wave of immigration. Continuous, nonstop, since the 1700s, in large numbers. Because, you know, if you think about it, immigration is, in a Darwinian sense, the self-selection of the strongest. It takes an awful lot to say one day when you're sitting at home, wherever home is, you know what, let's pick up and go. Let's pick up and leave everything we know, everything we're comfortable with. Let's go to the United States of America, where we don't speak the language. They're not that crazy about us. I'm not sure they're going to like us coming, but let's go. We're going to have fun. I mean, think about it. Think about it. Well, the truth of the matter is that because of all these strengths, I think we're on the cusp of some tremendous opportunities if we take advantage of it. Now, look, if we don't do anything other than match skills, what we talked about here, and that's our job. That's the president asking us to figure out how to best match skills to the needs of the 21st century. If we don't do basically anything else, we just do that, which is important, there's about 15.6 million projected additional jobs will be created in the next 10 years. A 10% increase, and many of these are good middle-class jobs. By the end of the decade, more than 6 out of every 10 jobs are going to require some kind of education past high school. We're going to need, for example, 280,000 additional software developers, computer programmers, average salary, $87,000 a year in today's dollars. We're going to need 41,000 more pharmacists, average salary $116,740. I don't know how they get that exact number is beyond me, but it's a lot of money, you know. It's one of those jobs you really can raise a middle-class family on. 500,000 nurses we need, and nurses are finally getting rewarded. And the average salary, $65,000 a year, almost 66. We need 115,000. I don't have to tell you guys this, but 115,000 new electricians, average salary 50 grand. Look, these jobs we know are going to come about because technology's moving, the population's aging, and the world is changing. For example, we have now, if you think about, you know, the way I kind of look at it, we've always adjusted to change. That's what's been so incredible of our country. I would have added, if I'd thought about it with Lee Kuan Yew, that we are facile, we are quick, we adjust quickly. I mean, we really do. We really have. Think about it now. We're from the 1970s. There's something like the studies showed that there are 112,000 fewer bank tellers out there. That's 112,000 jobs that aren't there. But the average salary was $24,800 a year. Now, they're not nearly as many, but there are now an awful lot of people, because 51% of the people in America are in the process of, they bank online. What do we need? We need folks who are not only literate, but we need folks who are engaged in cybersecurity. And the number of jobs that have been created just in the last little bit is we're somewhere in the order of another 13,000 jobs have recently been created recently. And their average salary, if my recollection is correct, I can't find it on the page here, is closer to $80,000 a year. Now, not nearly as many jobs. But then again, what's happening, if we're smart about it, if you look at the 30 occupations that, with the largest projected job growth, not all of them are great paying jobs, but for example, personal care aides, we're going to need another 600,000 of them pretty quick. Granted, they're only making 20 grand, but that's about what the bank teller was making. And it's a hell of a lot more jobs. We're talking about the need for folks, retail salespersons. We need another 500,000 of those in the next 10 years. Salary the same as that bank teller. The point I'm making is that what we've been able to adjust before, we've grown and made sure no one got left behind. No one got left behind. We didn't guarantee that every new job was going to be a high-paying job, but it did generate wealth. It did generate enough income so that you could, in fact, even if you didn't invest in the market, you could invest in your home, you could invest in education of your children, you could invest in a life that gave you a little more comfort and a little more security. Well, we're still able to do that if we're smart about it. The salaries of tool and die workers, used to be $39,000 on average. We lost a lot of them, they went abroad, but now there's a lot that are coming back. But now you got to be able to operate a computer, old buddy. And you got to be able to use the code. But the average salary, there's fewer, but they're making $50,000 a year when they start the job. We've also seen the shift to what it means to be an auto worker. I come from a state used to have the second highest per capita number of auto workers in America. Little state, small workforce, two of the biggest plants of General Motors and Chrysler, and then all the affiliates. Delco and, Autolite, et cetera. And they made a decent salary. But they were still making an hourly wage in the 20s by today's numbers. Now, there are 14% fewer jobs, 14% lower salary now, and 34% total number decreased, although we've created another 560,000 auto jobs since the bailout. And I know we don't like to use the word bailout, but that's what we did. We helped them through bankruptcy. But in the meantime, there are not nearly as many people, but you need the guys to take over and manage all those robots. You got to have people who fix them. You got to have people who operate them. You got to have people who know what they're doing with this new technology. And those folks are making an average of $51,000 a year. They're making a lot more money than the guys who worked in line. Fewer, but they're making a lot more money. The generic point I want to make is some jobs did disappear, other better paying jobs come along, which was sort of the point you were making, John. But we can't leave that cadre of people, the raw numbers, behind, but there are a lot of jobs. I will not take you through the 30 occupations largest projected growth, but they range from personal care aides to licensed practical and vocational nurses. The salaries range from $90,000 a year for software developers. We need another $250,000 of those folks. No, that's not true. $140,000, they make $90,000 a year. All the way to people who are going to be making only $24,000 a year as nurses' assistants. But again, there are the jobs there. Here's the generic point that I want to make to you, and I have a lot more detail to go into, but you all know this is an incredibly sophisticated audience and panel. I'm not being solicitous, it is. Here's the deal, guys. All these things happen basically if you do nothing but match jobs to skills to jobs. And that's where the community colleges come in, the business partnerships. That's why we've invested several $1 billion to do that. My wife is a community college professor. I get it. If I didn't get it, I'd be sleeping alone. But all kidding aside, it's the single most flexible educational institution out there. We're changing the way we can deal with Pell Grants. We're going to be experimenting, so you're allowed to do job training. We're changing the way in which we look at whether or not how you reward colleges for outcomes, not just reward colleges because they let folks in and all that student aid is available to them, et cetera. You all know all that, and I won't go into it all, but if you take a look, you're talking about everything from how we partner with business, how we're working with educational systems, and how we're how we're essentially notifying. I used to have a friend who was a great basketball player. He died of throat cancer at age 50, but he played, none of you are old enough, but Providence College used to have great teams. And back in the days when Jimmy Walker, who became All-Pro, and Reardon, who was All-Pro, and he was the sixth man on that team. His name was Pete. And Pete wasn't the brightest academic candle on the table, but he was a smart guy. No, he really was. And he used to say something, think about it now. And I'd say to him, but Pete, he said, Joe, you got to know how to know. Let me say it again. You got to know how to know. That's the tool we give people. You teach them how to know. And part of the problem here is, when Tom and I go around and say there are 100,000 high-skill manufacturing jobs going unanswered, people look at me from the old neighborhood and they go, huh? Well, where are they, Joe? Where are they? I mean, I don't see in the newspaper. Where's it listed? Well, this is about practically what Tom and I are doing, and we're going to prepare for the president in this report, is how you connect. How you actually let people know, because the American people have never, ever, 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 ever let their country down, given half a chance. They're not afraid of work. They're not afraid of going back. They're not afraid of starting all over again. If they really think, if they really can connect, if you do this, Charlie, this is what can happen. Mary, if you do that, this is what can happen. American people are tough. They're tough as hell. And they're ready. But they don't know how to know. They don't know how to get connected. Now, I'm sure, I'm always labeled the middle class Joe. In this town, that's not a compliment. It means I'm not sophisticated. But I tell you what, I'm sophisticated about how people are hurting. I am sophisticated about what they need. I'm sophisticated about how to grow this economy if you give people a chance. And part of the problem here is that if we just do what we're talking about, and there's a lot more to talk about the jobs agenda, which I will be presenting in much more detail later. If we just did that, we're going to be okay. People are going to get back to work. New jobs are going to be created. People are going to have access to the jobs that exist. But think about what we're not doing. Think about what we're not doing. We're not investing in infrastructure. Can you tell me? I've asked governors, just give me the two most important infrastructure projects in your state. Republican and Democratic governors have been working with every week about it. I promise you, they create millions of jobs. New Panamax ships are going to come rolling through the Panama Canal. Went down to take a look. Impressive. 160 feet wide. Need a 50-foot draft. Carry 50% more cargo. Cheaper. More energy efficient. Makes us more competitive. Do you realize only 3 ports can accommodate those craft when they come through? Yet 80% of everything on the back of those ships is either going from or coming to the United States. What are we doing? What are we doing? We're not investing in the ports. I got in trouble until I then had a very famous guy say the same thing I said, only he didn't get criticized as much, saying that, LaGuardia needs some upgrade. I used another reference. Think about it, folks. You're all sophisticated. You travel around the world. If I blindfolded you and put you in a LaGuardia airport and no one could understand the language being spoken, I'd say, where are you? I doubt you'd say the greatest city in the world. Atlanta, look what has to happen just to modernize the air traffic control system. The thousands of jobs, high-paying jobs, significant jobs, not just the engineer and the surveyor out there figuring out how to lay more concrete, but think of the jobs. But more important than that, just pick the 10 greatest bottlenecks in America for traffic. We're wasting billions of dollars in lost productivity. What are we doing? We're acting down here like this is something we don't invest in as public policy. Come on. There used to be a consensus on this as well. How do we remain the most productive place in the world, attracting the most innovative businesses in the world, if we don't have the world's first-rate infrastructure? I mean, all kidding aside, and this is not a political comment. A good friend of mine who leads the Republican Party in the budget side said, when you hear investment, think funding. Okay, meaning we're going to take your tax dollars. How do they think the highway system got built? How do they think all those airports got built? How do they think those ports got built? So what are we doing? We want to cut, my buddies up there want to cut $4.7 billion a year from NIH? We're in the cusp of so many incredible breakthroughs. Partnering with the private sector. I was just down at MD Anderson. They're talking about losing a whole generation of cancer scientists and specialists in certain areas. You can't expect these young women and men to go into a field where they can't get funded for the research they're doing. It's not the only funding. I'm not saying it's all government. You know, for every penny we invested in the Recovery Act, we took about $8 off the sidelines. Private capital. So the point I want to make to you is that I just think that if you think about what the possibilities are for relatively modest investment relative to our GDP and our capacity and the competition that's going on in the world, dealing with investments in science, technology, health research, infrastructure, what we have the potential to unlock. I was recently with a foreign leader. I spent a lot of time with foreign leaders. I know most of them pretty well. And one said to me, I'm afraid what you're going to do is what you keep saying. You're going to stamp a green card to every graduate from my country who walks across the stage getting a doctorate degree in your country. I said, you're damn right if I can. If I can. Folks, it sounds corny, but there's a reason why people still want to come here. The reason why people are breaking down the door. I realize we have serious competitors, but this is not a fundamentally new formula we need. I've said to you more than I should have, but I really feel so strongly that I think we are on the cusp of generating a new economic energy in this country over the next 2 to 6 years that will carry us in the same way we got carried after the end of World War II. We have it all, man. Doesn't mean other countries don't have a lot. They do. It's a good thing. When President Xi asked me why I was so anxious for the Chinese market to grow, he thought that was unusual. I said, so we can sell to you. So you can buy American products. That's what I want to grow. And I'm not being facetious. Where is it written we cannot be the world's leading value-added manufacturer in the world? Where is that written? Tell me. Where is it written that we will not lead the world in technological breakthroughs for the next 20 years as well? Where's that written? What changed? So, first and foremost, we have to, and I will be, if you'll allow me, invite me back when the final report is done with your help and lay it out in detail. But first and foremost, there are a lot of good paying jobs now. There's a lot of middle class jobs out there where skills are lacking. It's totally, completely within our capacity to train Americans to fill every one of those jobs. Completely in our capacity. And we're prepared to invest federal monies that we have, because again, all it is really startup money. It's the private sector that has always followed on. We generate investment. And I just think we're on the cusp of a great opportunity. It's nothing to do with Barack and me in the White House. It has to do with the state of the world. I'll conclude by quoting my favorite Irish poet. Everybody thinks I quote him because I'm Irish. I don't. It's because they're the best poets. I saw them. But Yeats, writing about his Ireland in 1916, he had a line about the first rising in Ireland. He said, all's changed utterly. A terrible beauty's been born. All's changed. This is a fundamentally different world than it was 15 years ago. Just 15 years ago. It's changed utterly. And a terrible beauty has been born. And we have the capacity. We have the capacity to take this chaos and shape it, at least in the economic front, in a way that not only benefits us, but benefits the world. And I think we make a big mistake if we don't do it. I need your help in figuring out how to deal with aspects of this beyond the job training piece. But I thank you for your indulgence, and it has been, as you've observed, indulgence on my part, telling you what my concerns are and my expectations are. But you're a great outfit, and I thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Let me just close very quickly. First of all, a big thank you to the Vice President, as I promised at the beginning, and Secretary Perez did. You clearly can see we have no more brilliant, committed, passionate champion for America and for the American middle class than the Vice President. I also want to thank Secretary Perez, who is now, after we're done with this, going to lead our roundtable of all of our panelists to gather their insights. And then, Mr. Vice President, we'll come back to you. We'll be your eyes and your ears. We'll listen. We'll take notes. We'll prepare a white paper for you so that you don't miss out on the discussion, and we'll bring that to you. And finally, I want to thank all of you for coming today and for being a wonderful audience. If you would just join me in giving one more big thank you to the Vice President, Joe Biden.
I'd like to invite them all. We will follow up and do that.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Follow me this way. We're going to do photos first, and then we'll go photos. Okay, let me go get that. Everyone can come this way.
We have great, we started first with a maritime program that is with the marine industry, training to do that. And, we've got it going.